Very good evening. This is Boddhisatya Tarafdar, and you're welcome on the platform of History That Matters. We have with us a very special person alongside me. You can see uh, famous eminent writer, Mr. Prasun Roy. Prasun Roy is basically a qualified engineer and he's into business activities. But then also, the first question which I have to Prashunda is how come history and that too Rash Behari Bose?
Thank you, Boddhisatya. It's my pleasure and honor to be here on your channel. You have been doing a great work, and I'm really happy to be a part of it, a small part of it tonight. And well, you gave a great introduction to me. Yes, by education, I am an engineer, and then I had worked in various industries, and finally, I started to work with my family business. And writing is a passion for me. So I began writing fiction for children
Is
initially,
it? Oh,
and
okay.
there are two books which I had written earlier for children, and then after that something came to my mind that why not think of writing about non-fiction. And I work with a literary agency which is called the Book Bakers, and it's led by a person called Mr. Suhail Mathur. So we were brainstorming one day, and I was thinking that what to write which would be meaningful for people of all ages. And then naturally the idea came that Bengal, which has contributed so much towards our independence movement, and there are so many people from Bengal who have their fair share of what they did for our country. And I started to read, and while I was reading, I came across Rash Behari Bose, and Sri Rash Behari Bose is a name which many of us know, but we only know the name. That is a very hard fact. Even if you see in Kolkata, there are people who belong to Bangla, who belong to Kolkata, and many of us even don't know that the road which is called the Rash Behari Avenue is not named after Sri Rash Behari Bose. So it
Rather
is
Rash Behari Bose.
unfortunate. Yes, yes. So it is, very ironical. And Tarpore, when I was starting to, and I started to read about Raspberry Bushu, uh, there were very less information which is available in the public domain. And if you read all those little informations also, you get an idea that here is a man who deserves a front seat amongst all the people, the top 3 4 people who had really done something for our independence. But he's somebody who has been totally erased from the public memory. So if you go out of Bengal, nobody even knows his name. So when I show my book to them, they even pronounce the name as Rash Behari Bose. So they don't have an idea that what was his name. So they ask me, वो कौन थे, उनका क्या contribution था. So that is where this irony still continues to play. And while I was reading about Rajbari Boshu, uh, there is, his life is a complete journey of one small young boy who was very young, 7 8 10 years old, when he was with his grandfather Shuboldo Grame Thakten. He was in the village, and from there his knack to fight for his country began. And he had a dream that I need to enroll into the British Army to understand how a warfare is done, and then only I can channelize a proper battle against the mighty British colonial rule. And that is the dream which he took forward throughout his life. There was only one aim that he had carried throughout his life, and he did it relentlessly while he was in India, while he was in Japan. All throughout, he was the one who continued to fight, and that is what makes him so unique. And his journey, it has been like a metamorphosis from a young boy who was very active to fight against uh, the British, to a matured individual who became a global leader and gave us something which we know as the International Army, and we know how he united with Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and how that affected the independence that we enjoy today. So his contributions were not very small, and we know very less about him. So this was the pointer which struck me, and I knew that many takers of the book will not be there. So people. It's unfortunate that there are so many biographies of so many people which are around of television stars, film stars, but when you come to all these people, there are very less books which are available for the younger generations, and
I
that
would
was
like to
the
just I would like to just say a few words in this regard. That as
yeah.
you are saying, you have used the name as Rash Behari Bose. So during this conversation, I will also say Rash Behari Bose other than saying Rash Behari Bose. So,
Mhm.
and the other point is that you said that there won't be many more takers of the book, but at
Mhm.
least we should celebrate that persons like you, authors like you, are making facts available for readers who are interested. Please continue.
Yes, yes, thank you so much. And after the book got out, there were people all across, the younger generations. They were. I had spoken about the book at two of the IITs. The students fraternity, basically, they want to know about the real heroes of our country. It's us who have this small responsibility. We are not historians. I am not a trained historian, but I'm somebody who is passionate about the people for whom we are living in a free country today. So that was the point which helped me propagate and pass on the message
Right, right.
across.
Like storytellers, I would say that you are a history teller. So it's better to be a historian if you are making history available for all. That's my
Absolutely,
point of view.
absolutely, absolutely. So that is what, and when you go through the life of Sri Rashbiri Boshu, you will see that the transformation, the journey of his transformation is so wonderful. Like when he was a small boy, he comes to Chandanagar with his father, and destiny always makes him uh, put destiny puts him into situations which enriches his life, and that is how he has slowly, step by step, he became who he was in the later part of his life. And when you see, when he went to Chandanagar, he comes in touch with Charuchandra Rai, who was a teacher of the Dupley College at that time, and he trains Rashbiri Boshu, Shirish Chandra Ghosh, all of them in the ideologies of revolution. From there, he moves on, uh, Chandanagar, and then he comes to Kolkata. Onushilan Samiti was getting formed at that time. He gets inspired by that. From there, his father, who is very worried about where his son is going, so he moves him across the country. First, he goes to Shimla, working at the Shimla press. Then he's sent to the Pasteur Institute, Kasoli. He comes back. He's sent to Dehradun, where he's again getting in touch with the revolutionaries over there. And this whole journey made him a man who had the power to convince thousands of people to join hands with him. And that is what later on helped him do what was unthinkable at that time. So when he was in Japan, he landed in Japan with the knowledge of just four Japanese words. And by the time of his death, he was one of the most honored persons of the Japanese society. The Japanese government, the imperial general headquarters of the Japanese army, they used to listen to what he used to suggest at that time. And he was able to convince the Japanese government to release the prisoners of wars to form an independent army for our country's revolution and independence. And the INA, it was the first voluntary army of any country's independence. And it was the only army which did not surrender after the World War II. So all his contributions, and he was not a man who was always seeking for his own recognition. He was a man who used to compile together everybody's interests for the independence of India. So that is where his union with Netaji was so beautiful. The two of them gelled so beautifully, and that is where the Azad Hind Fauj could do what it did. So this is something which only a man of that particular thought process could have done. So his entire journey, his whole life, the works that he did, he was part of the Gadar revolution. If you see Gadar was a huge revolution, and the Gadar party was existent all across the world. And how many books do we had about the Gadar party? I think there is only one or two small books which are available about Gadar revolution today. So these were incidences, these were events in history which they were able to be a part of, especially Rash Behari Bose was a part of. But these are never highlighted, especially because our history has been written and given to us by the people who used to rule us, and that is where it's all the history which we read. Our textbooks never find a mention of all these events, all their contributions, whatever they did throughout their life is never mentioned anywhere in our history books. And that is unfortunate, but it's our efforts, little efforts, to bring forth these things. The more we discuss, the more we talk about them, I think the next generation should be aware of it. The only concern that I had, while I was writing the book, and I'm doing a few more on some other, people of our freedom movement, and the only concern is our generation, and we know a little bit about these people because the discussions used to happen at our homes also. Like my father would talk about Netaji, my mother would talk about somebody else, and that is where we get an interest to know and read about them. But
A
the
kind of
next
connection as
generation,
well.
yes, now when I look at my son's generation, the
Mhm.
people who are the parents of that generation, they seldom talk about any of these great people. And unless we know about the foundation where we come from, we will never be able to be proud of who we are and build a future for ourselves and for our country. So that was a deliberate thing, I would say, to make us forget what our history is. But we should at least try to give this much little information to our next generation so that they know about who these people were.
Prashant, I have got one, two questions regarding
Sure.
your right now, just what you have said. It's
Mhm.
about, how the ILL was formed, Indian Independence League was formed, and how he, created such a right, like a group of people or something like this, in being in
Mhm.
Southeast Asia, being in Japan, and
Mhm.
how Japan respected a persona like Rash Behari Bose. So if
Mhm.
you can just put some light on that, please.
Sure.
And the other interesting point is that the creation of Indian curry. If you can just say something, a few lines about that too.
Sure, sure. So, when Rajbiri Boshu moved on to Japan, he was a fugitive over there. So, after the Gadar revolution failed, there was a massive manhunt, and Rajbiri Boshu was, if he would have stayed in India, he would have definitely been captured and executed. So, there was no option for him to stay back in India, and that is where, with a heavy heart, he fled and he reached Japan. And in Japan, again, there were people of the Gadar party who were there available, who with whom he connected, and from there his association began. So initially, Rajbir Boshu first his first step was to reach out for German help. So as soon as he reached Japan, he first connected with the German Foreign Office, and with their help, he went to Shanghai And along with him was Bhagwan Singh Gyani, who was another Gadarite over there. And they went to Shanghai, tried to smuggle arms back to India, but that was also intercepted. And that was the time when Rash Behari Bose realized that this is not the way forward that I should do. And he went back to Japan, to Tokyo. And in Tokyo, he started to raise awareness about India's independence. And he had written in some of his letters to Shojindra Sannal and Shirish Ghosh also, that as I am learning more and more about the politics of the world or world politics, I am realizing that our way forward is to make the rest of the Southeast Asia understand that independence of India is not just for India. If India becomes independent from the British rule, then it would lead to a greater prosperity of the entire world and especially East Asia. And this was the message that he wanted to propagate. And in 1915, on 27 November, there was they organized a huge meeting over there at a hotel where Lala Lajpat Rai was also there. And they were very verbose against the atrocities of the British. But that time, the British Foreign Office in Japan, they connected with the Japanese government and said that this man is a fugitive, you should send him back. So a manhunt began for him once again, and he was on the run. And that is where we again see Mitsuru Toyama, the man of the the man who founded the Black Dragon Society. He comes into play, and he takes Rash Behari Bose under his shelter. And what was his agenda? His agenda was Pan Asianism, that Japan and the entire Southeast Asia would rise on its own. And that is where he also wanted to connect to all these people who could help achieve that. And Rash Behari Bose became sheltered by him. And from there, he goes on and he takes shelter under the Soma family, Isosoma and Kokosoma, who were rich people. They were the owners of the Nakamuraya bakery over there. And in the house of Nakamuraya, Rash Behari Bose was hiding because everyone was searching for him. And he had to remain hidden in the attic for 6 months. He was hiding there and learning the language of the Japanese, learning the culture of the Japanese society. And that is where he was making himself more and more closer to the society. And at that time there was an extract which I've given in the book from his mother-in-law's statements, that she says that when my husband announced in our house that we are going to shelter this fugitive Indian revolutionary who is on the run, and the police and the British agencies are searching for him. So everyone in the household, all the people who used to work over there and the bakery also, they said that we would give our life, but we won't reveal this truth that he's hiding over here. They were taking a huge risk to protect a man whom they didn't even know. But the belief was so strong. And Rash Behari Bose did one thing. He made himself into a teacher, into an author who became valuable to the students, to the younger generations of the Japanese society, in parallel to seeking his own, work for India's independence. So while he was writing from there in the Proboto, and he was sending letters to Motilal Rai, which were getting published in Proboto, he was also trying to work over there as a teacher, as a guru of the Japanese society. And that is where he earned a huge respect among the Japanese people as well. And over there, the first thing after he got amnesty was he started to create an agenda for this propaganda. And that is where he tried to collect all the Southeast Asian youth and used to form youth forums and youth conferences over there. And after even he got the amnesty, the British were on the lookout for him, and he didn't get the manhunt order was removed, but he was still at risk. So his father-in-law, he said that with Mitsuru Toyama, they proposed that we would give our eldest daughter's hand to you in marriage, and his wife, she was she belonged to a affluent family, and she could have got married to somebody big shot in Japan, because they were an elite family, but she chose to become his wife and protect him. Together they changed their residence 17 times after their marriage, and she was named the living flesh shield of the Indian in exile. That was a term which was used about her. So, the society was trying to protect him. And then when he got the citizenship over there, even after that, there is evidence that there were about 5 or 6 kidnapping attempts on Rash Behari Bose, which happened by the British even after he became a citizen over there. And he had clearly written in a letter in the year, I think, 1930 or 31 to Chotinraj Shandal that
Okay.
I have got a citizenship over there, and now I can only move around to the places where there is no British influence. Any country which has the slightest British influence would immediately capture me and send me back to the British hands. So there is a narrative which where people say that, oh, Rash Behari Bose, he was somebody who never came back to India. He went to Japan, he got married over there, he had a family. So what did he do for this country? But no, he didn't ever get an opportunity to come back to this country. But sitting so far away in an age where technology was also so very primitive, he was continuously working for the independence of his motherland. He could have lived a lavish life over there, but he didn't do that. He could have left behind everything, like many of our great revolutionaries. Somebody became an aesthetic, somebody became a guru. They left the revolution movement, but these are people who they did not. They challenged
We
themselves
do not have any
to.
complaints against them also.
Yes, yes. And then, in the year around 1927, he formed the Indian Independence League as a society of people who would come together to discuss about the atrocities which the Indian people are facing by the British, and the British are actually using our people, the Indians, to rule over India. So the biggest strength of the British was the British Army, and the army comprised of 90% of Indian soldiers. And these are the soldiers who were controlling this whole huge India, which the India which was much bigger than what India we see today. So even Pakistan was a part of India at that time. So that India was being controlled by Indians itself, and it was so unfortunate. And that was the reason he started to raise this awareness amongst the people through the IIL. And the idea of the IIL was to generate this sympathy. He created the Asia Lodge over there, where Asian youth, not just Indian youth, the Asian youth would come and stay, and they would study. They would also, discuss about how we can contribute towards the independence of this country. And that is where slowly he was getting closer towards, forming a strong voice against the British atrocities. But the opportunity was not yet in his hand. The first opportunity that he had got was the Gadar Revolution during the First World War. But the Gadar Revolution failed because of a traitor. Otherwise, it would have been a massive
When he
success.
was in India, when Rash Behari Bose was in India.
Was in India in the year 1915. So
Right.
1915 February, the Gadar Revolution was crushed, and even if it was crushed, Singapore was taken over by the revolutionaries for 3 days, and they were ruling havoc over there before the reinforcements came and they captured Singapore back at that time. But then Rash Behari Bose understand that international help and international support is so much necessary to make this thing happen. And while he was in Japan, he was connecting with various people, he was connected with a man called Niki Kimura. Niki Kimura was very close to the Imperial General Headquarters. Niki Kimura was a man who had come to India earlier when Rajbiri Bushu was in India, and he was a revolutionary. So he came here to study at the Vishwabharati. So he was a student over there. He became a professor also over there, and then he went back to Japan and he became uh, a Japanese elite. And from there, he was able to connect Rashbiri Boshu to the IGHQ, to the other eminent people of that society. And then the opportune moment came around 1940s. Rashbiri Boshu understood that a second world war is about to break, and he started to play his cards at that time. And he was on the lookout that something would happen where we would pitch in, because now their entity, the IIL, was now strong enough with people of eminent voices. And this was the time when in the fall of Singapore happened. And the fall of Singapore, some people might say that fall of Singapore was by chance. Japanese got the fall of Singapore in their favor, but still they got it. And the fall of Singapore was the biggest showdown for the British at that time, because it was perhaps the largest number of POWs were taken of the British, and they were completely shattered by the Japanese at that time. And out of the number of soldiers who were captured, the maximum was again Indian soldiers who were taken as prisoners. And this is where Rashbehari Boshu pitched in to say and present an idea that this group of Indian soldiers, let us talk to them, let me and the other people associated with the IIL reach out to them. We will convince them to leave the POW status and live a life of honor by joining in an independent army which would fight for the country's independence. And he was in a very tricky situation at that time. Rashbehari Boshu was by that time a Japanese citizen. And think
Okay.
of it in this situation that I'm a Japanese and I am telling the Japanese government that you had taken so many prisoners of wars of your enemy nation. You free them, give them to me. I will make an army out of these people. So his credibility is also getting tested on the Japanese side. And on the other hand, the Indian media and the British media is verbose that this is going to be a pet army. Rashbehari Bose is a Japanese who has been plotted by the Japanese to create a pet army out of the prisoners
Fifth
of wars.
columnist or something like that. Fifth columnist.
Yes, yes.
Right.
So he was in, like, even the people who were thinking of joining the INA, they were also in a dual mind, because they were convinced by the Congress to join the British Army, and the congressmen over there were talking about that the INA would be a pet army of the Japanese. So they were also thinking that should we go back to the POW status? So to manage this whole expectation of the people, of the understanding of the people, because the Bangkok conference was the third conference. There were two other conferences which happened. One happened
Yes.
in Tokyo. So
Mm-hmm.
the people who came from Malay, there was Nedyam Raghavan and all the people who came from there, they were skeptical that this conference is happening while we are being surrounded by the Japanese. So this cannot happen. So let's go to some other place. So they went to Singapore, and from there they went to Bangkok. So Bangkok is a bit far away from Japan, and the Japanese influence is not so much. So there the final Bangkok conference could take place, and they could come out with a 42-point charter which they submitted to the IGHQ, telling them that you have
Here,
to
I would like to mention one point also. So sorry that I stopped you.
no, no,
Uh,
please, please.
that in Tojo's cabinet or in Tojo's government, India
Mhm.
was not in their agenda. Their aims were
Right.
up to the borders of Burma only. It was Rash Behari Bose who convinced Japanese government to include the concept of India or the independence of India, the aspect related to independence of India in their agenda. Whether I'm right or wrong, Dada?
Yes, yes, that is very, very true, and that is where Tojo, when Tojo was an intelligent man of the British society, and he understood that yes, what they are proposing is in fact true. And think of this: the Japanese never came to attack India, and the Japanese never had an agenda of ruling over India. It was always the imperial, the colonial rulers of the British who had been colonizing us and the rest of the Southeast Asia. So the Japanese support which he wanted was there in the charters, and he submitted that. Along with that, he had to manage the expectation of the other people also, and that is where it was difficult for him, and it was breaking his health also. So the IIL was the, I would say, it was the blueprint, and from there they got the opportunity during the Second World War, and they formed the Indian National Army. And then, as we know, that Rashbiri Boshu was aging, and he was already in touch with Netaji right from 1938. So he had written letters to him telling him that the Congress is now it's a evolutionary body. It should become a revolutionary body, which letter was intercepted earlier. So there were so many communications that were happening between the two, and Rashbiri Boshu knew that to carry forward this force, which is the INA, it needs a magnanimous leader. And he was not like that I would only do it. So he was
Mhm.
always there thinking that somebody who has the majesticity to control the expectations of all these people should lead it. And that is where he made the channels possible for Netaji to come down. And then what we know is history. The rest of it is history, because Netaji and the Azad Hind Fauj, and then later on the INA trials and everything which falls in place. Netaji is somebody whom we all salute and respect, and that is where the greatness of these people come out. That how they united, how they worked towards one mission. And to your second question about the Indo curry, I would say that
Yes,
yes,
everybody
the,
should be aware about this, should know about this.
yes, yes, and the when Rajbiri Boshu's wife passed away, and he dedicated himself completely into working for the India's freedom struggle. At that time, his children were very small, and his mother-in-law asked him that you are now somebody who is known quite well in Japan. So you get married a second time. So he said that that is not possible. There is only one person whom I could, dedicate my love to, and she is no more with us physically, but she would always be there with us in our memories. And my entire being is for the independence of my country. And he started to be a part of the Nakamuraya bakery also. And that is where he also created a revolutionary idea. He was perhaps not the chef who was cooking it, but the idea that he created was that curry, this word, is very Indian, but Japan or the rest of the world didn't have an Indian curry ever. They were used to have, the English styled curries. So curry, which is English, but the curry word is very, very authentic Indian. So that was a revolutionary idea to make a curry which is from the flavors of India. So that is where he created the Indo curry. It was a normal chicken curry, or what we call in Bengali as a murgi jhol, with a helping of plain rice. And that particular item, that revolutionary idea, it was a blockbuster hit at that time. So the bakery or the restaurant would get flooded with customers, and there
Mhm.
were like even millions of helpings in some years. 1 million orders were placed to have that particular item
My
in the
God.
Japanese society. And the shop still exists. If you look into it, it's still there near the Shinjuku station. The Bose family is no more, I think, a part of that particular franchisee, but the shop is still there, and they still serve the Indo curry. So even if somebody is visiting Japan, if they go to the Shinjuku station, when they come down from the station, there is this restaurant which is there, and they have a hoarding, big, photograph of the Indo curry present over there as well to this day.
So anybody, any Indian visiting Japan and that particular place must have this curry,
Yes,
must taste this curry.
absolutely.
So okay, Dada, great to know all these things, all the facts. So let us come to the present era. As we always say that history is not properly taught to us, and history must be rewritten. And the other aspect is that year by year, when the things are not getting corrected or rectified,
Mhm.
or getting changed, so generation after generation, one by one generation is missing all this information.
Very
So
true.
we are missing so the generations are missing whenever there is a batch which goes out of school or something like that.
Right.
And having and what I believe is that, having all these things in the at the college level in history, that won't help. Rather, in schools where all the students, where the streams are not getting divided or something like science, arts, or
Right.
commerce or something like that, so everybody should be aware about all these things, and the school textbooks must be having all these things. And when coming to this present era, when we say that history must be rewritten, and these there are, films, OTT platforms are there, and so many things are coming out, and so
Mhm.
many things are coming out, and people are saying that this was actually this, that was actually that, and this should
Right.
have been this, we should have told about this. But I believe, I would like to know your opinion, that I believe that there are so many things, so many acts of bravery are already present in public domain,
Mhm.
as you have already
Mhm.
highlighted the contributions of great revolutionary Rash Behari Bose. So there are
Mhm.
so many things which are already present in our public domain. So why we are running behind that this could have been or that could have been? So how to highlight all these aspects which are already there in public domain? What is your take on that?
Okay, so this is a very valid point that you have made, and there are informations available in the public domain, but some of these sources are authentic, and many of these sources carry, different informations also. So, but I would say that there is a ratio of uh, the information available on the public domain which we can refer to, but the impetus to look into all these public domain information, that is gone missing from our minds. And the reason is that the thing that you highlighted in the first place, that in a school textbooks we don't get to read about all these people, all these people's contributions. So the basic idea of digging up about them and getting the public domain information to read about them, to know about them, that idea only gets missing from our minds. So unless and until we have this, the facts available at the school levels, then a child won't even think of knowing about who these people were. And that is where our youth, they don't go ahead and dig up all these data. It is something which has to be put into their minds, that yes, I want to know about this particular person, I want to know about Bahajuddin. So Bahajuddin, who was Bahajuddin, who was Sachindranath Channal? Nobody even talks about all these people. We have one-liners mentioned about, say, Bahajuddin, but Bahajuddin had such an enormous contribution towards our freedom movement. Sachindranath Sannal had such a wonderful contribution towards our independence movement, but we don't find their names mentioned anywhere in our textbooks, and that is where we don't even think about knowing more about them. So the public domain information is there, but the impetus to know about them, that becomes missing somewhere. And this is something which I think, like, if we keep on reading so much about so many of the historical figures. We read, say, thousands, or rather hundreds of pages about the Mughal history, but how much we read about our heroes, the true heroes, the unsung heroes of our country. So at the younger level, this is very, very necessary, so that that spark comes, that okay, let me search. Even when a person is going to watch a movie or an OTT, there are biopics on so many different kind of people all around us, but how many biopics are made about all these revolutionaries who had so much of contributions? We have one, I would say, which was a proper movie on Netaji himself. So the rest of the people, so there is nothing. And today, when you see they're making a movie on one character, they would try to use somebody's name to get it a bit more highlight over there. So, the OTT rendition also should be to bring out these individual heroes and highlight their own contributions, not, to, bring them under the shadow of somebody else. If, that should be there, because when I was writing my book, I was telling you the other day that initially when I was writing the manuscript, I had named it The Other Bose. Then the thought came that why the other Bose? Netaji is the Bose we know as Bengalis, as Indians. So writing it as the other Bose puts this man and that man at conflict with each other. Why do that? They were not at conflict in each other, when they were alive. They were working in unison. Then why should we do that? Then that is where we named the book as A Samurai Dream of Azad Hind. So even when you look at the OTT platforms, or even if you look at books, if you have a book on a particular character, say Bhagajotin, you have one book, suppose in English, you won't find other publishers getting interested to publish a second book on Bhagajotin. You go to a European country, they would have 10 books on their heroes. But in our country, it's very unfortunate. You find one book on one particular hero, and that is there. Oh, एक हो गया तो काफी है. It's kind of like that. So this is something which we should, as a society, break through, I believe, because Anuj and Chandrachud ji, they are doing a fantastic job. They had brought up so many books about Netaji, his life, his journey, is the death mystery, everything. So they were able to build that narrative, and that too over so many years. They had dedicated so many decades of their lives to bring that thing out. But for the rest of the heroes, it's very unfortunate that we try to just listen to them and then forget it, and then we go to watch a biopic about some movie actor or somebody else. So as a society, this mindset has to change, and once we start talking more about it, I think the mindset would definitely change if we keep on talking about it at various platforms.
There is another angle to the modern era, that is the post colonial period when India got its dominionhood or so-called
Mm,
independence.
right.
That the usual history books, what we in our usual history books, what we learned, that through Gandhian ways only we achieved our so-called independence.
Mm,
But the matter is, just you observe, just after independence, we had
mm,
unification of these Rajwadas or the
mm,
princely states. We
mhm,
had to use courts for that. And I'm saying about Operation Polo. I'm
mm,
saying about the operations done in Nagaland, and the conflicts with Pakistan are there. Then capturing
right.
Goa is there. So if we had so much belief on our Gandhian principles, then what happened to that in post colonial times? In my opinion, I have got a very clear opinion in that regard, that Gandhian values or non-violence was applicable only for Britishers. but for our own people we could not manage them. We had to apply the ways which the revolutionaries took up, or later Rash Behari Bose and Netaji took up. So, so that is my point.
Yeah,
I
even if you listen to, Professor Kapil Kumar, sorry to interrupt you,
no, 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 please.
he always says that the Congress was formed as a safety valve after 1857, because the Britishers knew that if these people get into a revolt, then we would be slaughtered like cattle. So put a safety valve and make a body which would, pacify all the anger, all the, revolution, and mellow it down. And the Congress kept on doing that thing till we got independent. And that was their agenda all throughout, if you see. And the mass movement, the non-violent movement is a part of it. You can be non-violent, but for how long? And even Rash Behari Bose used to say that, why are, Nehru and Gandhi and all the other Congress people, they are so verbose against the Japanese when he was alive. He's saying that, see, the Japanese are getting us our independence. Abhi, these Japanese people, you are verbose that these Japanese are so ruthless. They did this thing in China, that thing in China. How much of the Chinese people are telling you the truth? This was always there. So the narrative is, if somebody is helping me, to put out the fire which is there on my house, and I am telling that this person is a slaughterer, so he's putting off the fire in my house, but I'll not let him do. Let my house burn. So that is something which was always there. And even if you see after the dominion status itself, why did we accept the dominion status? Why did we choose 15th August as our date of independence, the
When
day of
Japan surrendered on that day.
Japan surrendered? So that was all so very, very imperative by the British, that uh, these people should be under our control even if we are leaving. And there was this fear that, what if the the INA, the Azadin Fauj, gets regrouped? What if Netaji comes back? Because they also never believed that Netaji had died in the plane crash there. So they were also apprehensive that, what if this person comes back? What if the regrouping of the INA happens? We would be totally in a soup. So put the dominion status, that there is somebody at our back to back us out and get a waterproof solution to this thing. And that is where, when the INA trials happened, the Britishers understood that this is somewhere which we won't like to go, because the common people have joined hands and the entire army is against us. So the forces that the people, then why did the normal people join in into these revolutions of after the INA trials? Why weren't they non-violent at that time? I would say. And they were tagging the Royal Indian, Navy revolt as a revolution for rising pay scales. It was not so. These were people who were fighting for their existence, their own identity. They don't want 2 rupees rise in their salaries. That was not the reason. Again, they were trying to rewrite the history in a different manner, but they knew that this is where we will not be able to survive. So the policy of non-violence is very good in books, I would say, but on ground, and Rash Behari Bose was always verbose about it, that on ground we need to fight and bring out our independence. So non-violence will not. It's a good theory, but in practicality, it cannot get you your independence.
Absolutely, Dada. Then coming to Bengal and Bengal contribution of revolutionaries from Bengal in Indian independence. I I must say just before raising the question that we should not sound regional in that case, and we are actually very worried whenever we say this type of things, that people hearing us, listening to us, might think that they're why they're saying about a particular region. But why I'm mentioning that this, as we see after exams and all, we see the merit
Mhm.
list, or we analyze the mark sheets and all, then we see now who
Right.
has got first class and who has got second class. In that
True.
sense, I am saying the region which has contributed so much, that aspect must be highlighted, and the other regions must follow the region which has done well. We in this era also, we used to say that the states like Gujarat and Maharashtra are doing economically well. Then why we should be mentioning, we should not be mentioning about that the contribution of revolutionaries, the contribution of freedom fighters in Indian
Mhm.
independence from the region of Bengal was at the top. And in this regard, I would like to also mention that in Rajya Sabha, there was
Mhm.
a question in this regard, that the prisoners, the political prisoners of Kalapani, the cellular
Mhm.
jail,
Right.
70% or more than that were from Bengal only. There are lists over there displayed at the cellular jail also. And
Yeah.
as you have already mentioned about Anujdar, a few years, just 2 years back, I believe, he has
Mhm.
also displayed as same kind of a thing in a
Mhm.
Facebook post, that
Right.
the contributions from Bengal. So, what is your
Right.
take on that?
I
Prasun,
think
what is your take on
that
contributions
is
from?
absolutely. I think that is a very, very valid point that you have raised. And the Britishers, Rash Behari Bose, when he was trying to get enrolled into the British Army, he was always rejected. His applications to join the army was always rejected by the Britishers, the British Army at that time, when he was young, in the year around 1907, 8, that time. The only reason was that the Bengal youth was considered radical, who would do anything, and they could never trust them at that time. And more so, if you look the trajectory of how the revolutionary mindset had developed, it started from a very early time. It started, the thought process would started from, I would say, Swami Vivekananda was a man who was always thinking about the society which India would be when she becomes independent. So in 1897, he said that 50 years, the next 50 years, the one agenda which would be prime for this nation is the freedom of this country. And exactly 50 years later, India became independent in the so-called words. So that germination of the idea to dedicate yourself for your motherland began so early at that time. We see the formation of Anushilan Shomiti in our Bengal. And when Aurobindo Ghosh was a young man, he had come back and he was taken, he went to Baroda, Gujarat, and Maharaja Saji Rao Gaikwad, he was, working as a personal secretary of the Maharaja, because the Maharaja was, compassionate about the Indian revolutionary movement, but he could not be very verbose about it. So he made Aurobindo Ghosh a teacher of French studies at the Baroda College, which is now the Maharaja Sajirao University. And I had the privilege of delivering a lecture over there, and I was telling them over there that he was made until the vice principal also in that college. But the Maharajas and the princely states were supporting the Bengal revolutionaries as well at that time. And when he wanted to come back, and with Bahajuddin and Badinder Ghosh, they formed the Unishalan Shomiti here in Bengal. That was the genesis. The thought process of the Anushilan Shomiti carried forward into the other provinces. That is where we see so many unnamed people. Shirish Chandra Ghosh, how many of us know about his name? He did so much. He was a lifelong companion of Rash Behari Bose. Even after Rash Behari Bose went away, he had to go away to Japan. Shirish Ghosh was always active here, but he, died a life where he ultimately went mad at the end of his life. There's Shochindranath Sannal. Shochindranath Sannal, today we know a little bit about Shochindranath Sannal, but he was somebody who was always working for the independence of India. He formed a society in Patna. The HRA was formed by him, which later on inspired the likes of Bhagat Singh. So, what Bhagat Singh did was not a sporadic incident, which sometimes people, highlight. It was an ideology which germinated in Bengal from the Anushilan Shomiti, from the youth who were inspired to take forward 1857 revolution to a next level where they would attack and bring back the independence with bravery and valor. Bahajuddin, when he was, creating his agenda, which was called the Operation Christmas Day plot, that was a major plan. And despite being in Bengal, they were collaborating all across the country with the rest of the people. They were collaborating. He met the German crown prince, got an assurance of supply of arms that the Germans would attack and they would attack at the same time, get hold of the Andamans and Bengal, and then they would launch an attack pan India to free the country, because Bengal presidency was a very, very strong hold of the British at that time. So, it is true, and it is well accepted. Even at that time it was much more accepted that these are the people of Bengal who had the idea of revolution cooking up so strongly in their minds that they could dedicate their heart and soul into the whole activities. There are so many unnamed people who became a part of this. Taraknath Das was there. There is, what do you say, the Motilal Roy of Provortok. So they are people who were collaborating with each other, meeting with each other when the Gadar revolution was happening. The Gadarites came back from the US, and it was a time when they were trying to do something, but they were not able to find a proper leader to lead the revolution forward. And that is where we see Vishnu Ganesh Pingle coming to Bengal and meeting Bahajuddin and asking him what to do. And Bahajuddin redirects him and tells him, you go to Banaras. Over there, you will meet Rash Behari Bose. You will meet Shochindranath Sannal. And Rash Behari Bose is the man who can lead this major revolution forward. And Rash Behari Bose was known as the Bangali Babu or the Mota Babu over there. That was his nickname, which they used during the Gadar movement. In Benares and, the Dehradun, earlier, before going to Banaras, he was there in Dehradun. He was working at the Forest Research Institute. He was in touch with Amurendranath Chatterjee. Amurendranath Chatterjee, in the disguise of a normal man, he was a fund collector for Jugantor. Jugantor was formed to lead the revolution after, the Alipur bomb case, all the arrests that happened, and Aurobindo Ghosh went away. People thought that Bengal revolution would die out, and Bahajuddin and the others did those outrageous acts to establish that Jugantor is still alive. And these were the revolutionaries who were continuously working. So Bengal had produced so many of these heroes. A few days back, the grand nephew of Amurendranath Chatterjee suddenly wrote an email to me. I wasn't expecting something like that. And he
Great.
had written that you had mentioned him in your book, so, in so many places. I'm thankful that nobody knows about him, but you had taken out a space for him over there. So these
That's
are
great.
people who used to exist. Jitendra Mohan Chatterjee. He was a person who was leading from Saharanpur. He was a Bengali. He was leading from Saharanpur to do something about gathering all the revolutionary minds of that area. And when Rashbiri Boshu met him over there, and after he was under the scanner of the British, he gave the duty of leading the way forward to Rashbiri Boshu before he had to leave to he left for London to study law. And he was also a man who was a part of these initial movements. So all these people, all these names, they are absolutely unknown now, but their contributions, even if small, they were there. They could go out and participate into these selfless acts, which I would say they were like stepping stones, because independence was not something which we could attain at a single go. We could have, but there were incidences which stopped us to do that. Tegard said that had Bagajuddin been born in England, his
Right.
statue would be there at the Trafalgar Square. So it was unfortunate for all our heroes that such things happened at that time, but their dream never ceased to exist, and that is where finally we could achieve what we have achieved.
It was absolutely fantastic to have you on this platform, and I believe that we have successfully touched the important points, though this is actually a vast subject, so narrating all the aspects is impossible.
Yeah,
But in this 1 hour session, I believe that you have very beautifully explained or touched the important points. And the one of the comments which I have received is, here it is displayed that in school history books Rash Behari Bose must be there, and in the bracket the person has particularly mentioned that this book written by Prasun Roy, students must be aware about this. So I believe that this is a very big compliment, and I truly believe that in my earlier programs also I said that we must celebrate facts. So here also I would say that we must celebrate facts. Facts are facts. So we must celebrate that. And salute to our revolutionary freedom fighters. Salute to Raj Bihari Bosu. Salute to Netaji. All the revolutionaries. I would like
absolutely.
to thank you, Dada, for joining me in this program and for
And
being with me for an hour and for accepting my invitation.
thank you so much from my end, because with your help I'm able to reach out to so many people, because the more we talk and more we reach out to the people, they get to know about all these people. So thanks to you for all your efforts, and for making this happen. And it was wonderful talking to you. I am doing
Same.
my bit about some unsung heroes of our Bengal revolutionaries and Indian revolutionaries. I'm working on a few other books also. I hope I would be able to bring some things for children also, and some
Yeah.
books on other great heroes of our freedom struggle. So thank you so much once again for making this possible tonight. Thank you.
And I would like to wish you good luck for all your new ventures, new projects, and in coming days also we shall be doing such programs. uh,
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good night to everybody. Vande Mataram. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Good night.